The Georgia Bulldogs come out on top 35-3, as was expected with this cupcake of a game. The seniors shined, many showed out, and Georgia got a much-needed tune-up before what is expected to be a heated matchup against Georgia Tech. I'm Keegan, my co-host is Chito, and this is Dogs Off the Leash. The leash.
Butter your biscuit, it's the Sunday scary show, you don't want to miss it. Talking about sports, talking about ball.
Chito, have you seen the first Men in Black with that alien dude in human form where he's like beat bopping around the kitchen going, sugar, more?
Classic movie. One of my favorite Will Smith for sure.
Okay, because that's kind of how I felt from that Charlotte game. It was nice to kind of sit back, maybe miss some plays. Oh, what happened? Touchdown? Oh, what do you know? Like, we're up another 10 points. What do you know? Because that used to be the way of Georgia. It's probably how Ohio State fans have felt all season, just not even having to pay attention. Their team just cruises to victory. So it was a nice thing to behold. And then I sat up and watched Georgia Tech get blanked 28-0 in the first quarter. Tried at a comeback. We're about to go down just a touchdown on the 1 yard line. Haynes King throws a 100-yard interception, and then I think they ended up losing like 35-21 or something. But I kind of stayed up to do some pregame work and get a little bit of a beat on our opponent for this upcoming week. But alas, Georgia Tech shit the bed, so that'll be interesting. We'll definitely talk way more about it on this week's preview. But Chito, how did you feel about the Dogs winning against Charlotte? And then just in general, I guess the noteworthy thing was, of course, that it was senior day, but like outside of that, in the world of college football, what did you see?
Yeah, one of the things that I really wanted to watch going into this game was for Georgia to establish its rhythm. It's really easy to take a week like this off, not really pay attention, not to do the things that you've been taught all week in practice. And, you know, we're not big Georgia Tech fans around here, right? They've been singing and chirping about how good of a season they've been having. But what you come to find out in a program like Georgia and Georgia Tech is the consistency over a long period of time. We saw Georgia handle business, which is what we talked about in this podcast. We saw Georgia Tech get absolutely dominated at home, too, for Haynes King's senior day. The final score ended up being 42-28. They got ran all up and down on. So let's look at it now. Georgia gets to go into this week feeling good, having a game plan to run the ball, pretty healthy. You got freshmen in, sophomores in, you got your seniors to go out the right way. Georgia Tech has to go back to the drawing board a little bit and figure out how to not get embarrassed in Atlanta against Georgia. They will come back, wanting to take that game. We're not going to overlook them, but we have the recipe to beat them now, right? And they were already kind of sus to begin with. So you have to like where you're at as far as a Georgia fan. And Georgia Tech, you got to be a little bit worried now. You really do. And now your chances, if they even exist, of getting into college football playoff hinge on beating Georgia at a neutral site game. So not the best place to be.
No, not at all. And I do think that Georgia Tech has plenty of playmakers to keep it interesting if they're playing spot on, but that defense was just atrocious. And outside of a couple of good pass rushes in obvious passing downs, which Georgia Tech handled well, Pittsburgh was able to do whatever they wanted against Georgia Tech on defense. So we will be looking forward to that later on. And of course, we'll dive into it on the preview. But Chito, several things we talked about preceding this senior day against Charlotte actually took place. And besides many seniors getting their due and getting good playing time and lots of reps, even guys like Rod Robinson took the field for once and got to see some action. So a lot of positives there. But Bo Walker had 3 touchdowns in this game, and he showed out in pretty much every play he took part of that he is a complete running back. So that was really cool. I know he's a fan favorite. We've been looking forward to seeing him in action. Another guy we mentioned, Jaden Riddell. He had several catches, including one that ended up not in maybe an official break tackle, but he trucked the dude on the sideline, I think out of bounds, but still just kind of showing his versatility, the speed plus the power. So he's kind of been a Brock Bowers light for me, but he could develop into a great tight end at Georgia. So that was cool. And then C.J. Wiley, the 5-star freshman who has been sitting the bench most of the year, has had a couple of opportunities, but now that Talon Taylor is out, sidelined with an injury, C.J. Wiley is the young cat who could really make a difference for this offense, and he was able to contribute several times throughout the game. I think he might have had one drop. It was kind of like on the fence for me if it was a bad throw from Puglisi or not, but C.J. Wiley really was solid. And then Puglisi, he's showing his development, his growth. He's got pretty good decision-making. I think Puglisi is maybe just more game reps away from being quote-unquote ready. So it's cool to see Puglisi do his thing. And even Ryan Montgomery got into the game. So all the lines of the depth chart got to see a little bit of love, a little bit of playing time, and Georgia pretty much cruised. Negative takeaways. The first drive, we ended up punting the ball. The fourth quarter, we didn't score at all. But look, it's Charlotte. We didn't need to run up the score. I would have loved to see Gunnar Stockton have 5 touchdowns. It wasn't necessarily a Gunnar Stockton heavy day. He was handing the ball off a lot. So we did not get to see a lot of quote-unquote Heisman stat padding. On the other side of college football, you saw Arch Manning go for 6 touchdowns. But look, Arch Manning was crying on the bench last week. Arch Manning's acting cocky, yelling at the camera the next week. I'm glad we got Gunnar Stockton not scoring touchdowns, congratulating his teammates, being a fly on the wall for the success against Charlotte, and not making it so much about him. So I'll take Gunnar Stockton not getting stats over an Arch Manning 6 touchdown day any day, because we want culture. And a Heisman would be great, and we're pushing for it. If you see us on social media, we're pushing for that Heisman. We'd love it, but at the same time, we don't want a Heisman at the expense of the success of the whole team. So Georgia did what we needed to do. We got that W, and I think it's just kind of moving and grooving. But, Chito, there were a bunch of games around college football that I found interesting. I thought Miami handled business pretty well against Virginia Tech. But most notably in the SEC, Tennessee went into Gainesville and beat the brakes off of the Florida Gators 31-11. Not something that has happened since, I believe, 2003. Chito, what did you make of that? And is Florida hitting an official low, or can they go even lower next week against Florida State?
Yeah, so admittedly, Florida-Tennessee was actually one of the few games that I actually got to watch on Saturday. My Saturdays are normally pretty busy, but I did have some time to sit down and watch that, and that got out of hand really quick, right? I mean, I called the upset, and I was absolutely wrong there, but Florida's been a quality team, just haven't really had the consistency, whether it's coaching or players, to keep that going. But my buddy was joking, like, they may have to fire the interim coach, too. At this point, it's like, what's he coach? Because surely it ain't offense or defense. Because I don't know what's going on with this game. Yeah, just bad look. Shout out to Tennessee. They'll have a big game against Vandy. I think it'll be in Knoxville. And I think there is some conversation about them being on the bubble, them or Vandy. So I'm actually pretty excited about the finale. 2 Tennessee teams going at it next week.
Yeah, depending on what teams end up losing, who knows how many SEC teams we could sneak in there. But it looks like right now, Georgia, Texas A&M, Oklahoma are probably the locks, I would say. And Bama needs to win out. And then they're in a precarious situation with the SEC title, so that'll be interesting. If we got 12 teams, that would put Vandy as the first team looking in. Texas kind of right behind them. Tennessee after that. And Tennessee at 20 looks like a stretch, but who knows, maybe enough. I don't know if 8 teams are going to lose to help Tennessee out there. But, hey, there are plenty of SEC teams to pay attention to with a lot of relevance. Now, I did not call an upset for Notre Dame against Syracuse, but I was pleading on the podcast that Syracuse would do something. They did not do anything. We can only worry about Georgia, and we can only get better in the margins. Now, I will say this. I saw Kirby Smart yelling a whole lot throughout this game, because I think the tendency is for any human being outside of Kirby Smart, Nick Saban, and a few other psychopaths is to relax and enjoy an ass kicking when you're up big. But that is the kind of complacency that leads to mistakes. Kirby wasn't having it. I saw him chewing some ass on the sideline, so I know I'm not the only Georgia fan that kind of gets tickled about that. I'm sure if you're on the other end of said ass chewings, it's not as entertaining. That was a notable sight. Week to week, I like what this offense is doing in the growth in the receiver room. Not only are we completely past, knock on wood, all the drops of last year, but Guys like Noah Thomas are really, really making their place in this offense, especially after Colby Young's absence with his injury. So I know we've expected Noah Thomas to be a bigger part of this offense week to week, but it was really cool to see him just ball out at certain times in this game against Charlotte. He had one play in particular where I think he juked like 5 guys on the play, made his way, doing the zigzags across the football field, kind of like you see more at the high school level when there's a clear speed advantage with DBs and wide receivers at times. So Noah Thomas can be a game breaker, and that was a really cool thing to see, especially going into the postseason. So we got young guys contributing. We got our seniors in clear postseason form. Gunnar Stockton probably didn't have his best game. He did throw 1 interception and had a couple of bad throws, but overall I thought he had pretty good decision-making, and at the end of the day, we didn't really need it. So look, we are in a perfect position to go forward heading into Georgia Tech week. We know what we need to do, but I don't think there should be any lack of motivation. We have a major rival, and Georgia Tech now has everything to play for, because before they were in a better spot with potentially losing a second game to Georgia. Now their backs are against the wall, and the only hope they have of making the playoff is beating Georgia. So we shall see.
If you had to choose to go to the SEC championship or get a first-round bye into the playoff, Keegan, which would you choose?
This year, I would choose a first-round bye.
So some things for Georgia fans to watch is Bama is another one of those teams who started really well, especially after they beat us. They were a favorite. Since have lost to Oklahoma. They had that Florida State loss. Right now, it's looking like, obviously, if Bama beats Auburn, they'll be in the SEC championship game. They have the tiebreaker over us. A loss to Auburn will put them out of the playoff completely. So at least from that perspective, we can kind of expect Alabama to do what they need to do. That's a lot of pressure on them. They can't really worry about that scenario with us. Texas A&M, on the other hand, is a little bit different. They have Texas at home. I think that they're in the college football playoff regardless, right? They're one of the top 3 teams. They're undefeated all season with a pretty good schedule. You lose to Texas, you probably lose your first round-ish favoritism, but you're in no matter what. So do they take that loss, forego the SEC championship, and take that route that we kind of want to take and just stay out of the SEC championship game? Obviously, if Georgia gets to that position, we'll go and we'll try to win it. But I don't know how much an SEC championship game means in the grand scheme of thing anymore. I know it's important for Georgia fans. I know it's important for Kirby, but we have to look at, real title opportunities. So I'm curious how this is going to play off with 1 week left. And then for us, obviously, we're in. But if we beat Georgia Tech, we get the automatic first round bye, and hopefully we miss the SEC championship. So we'll see. We'll see how this plays out. It's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, and that's why I said this year I think I'd prefer the first round bye. For one, we haven't had that experience yet, so it would just be cool on a level of fandom. Watching Georgia play a playoff game at home in December sounds fun to me. But the traditionalist in me wants SEC championships as much as possible, as often as possible. So I won't be disappointed if we end up going to the SEC championship by any means. Right. We're not at a point where it's like, damn it, we got in. We're not at that level in South Park where you're literally trying to lose to end the season in baseball. Like, it's not quite there. I think either way for Georgia, it's a win-win. You get into the SEC championship. You're in the SEC championship. When is that bad, right? Even now. You don't get into the SEC championship. We've done well enough to where we have the first round bye. So to me, it's a win-win.
And for sure, just to point to recent history, I believe Carson Beck got hurt in the SEC championship. And who knows how far that team would have gone with Carson. Maybe further, maybe not. So just injuries happen. I've mentioned this these days in college football. It's a grind. I think it's more important to have a healthy roster than a talented roster. So, yes, we may come away unscathed, but this is football. You always risk injuries the more games you have to play. So a lot of people will make the counter argument with rust versus rest. It is tough to say, but we're just going to have to see how it plays out. And a lot of times when the format keeps changing, you kind of need at least 1 or 2 trial years before you have a sample size big enough to be like, yes, let's do that, or no, let's not do that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Last year, I felt like rust was an issue, but was rust really an issue, or did Notre Dame just have our number? I don't know.
Notre Dame was a better team than us, and we were down a starting quarterback. You can't expect a backup all year to go in and beat them. As good as Gunner is now, he didn't have the reps. He didn't have the opportunities. We weren't going to beat that team with Gunner regardless. So
I think we could have made it closer, but even us playing at our best, it would have been a hard game with how we had struggled with certain aspects throughout the season. So I'm on the fence with that one. We definitely need to do a poll this week, though, because I want to hear what everyone has to say, and I know there's plenty of different takes on that. But the traditionalist says, hey, SEC championships, they look great on banners, and they look great to recruits. Great bragging rights. If last year we didn't get the SEC championship, which was amazing, but we got a national title, that's really at the heart of the question. The only problem I have with that, though, is it's not like we're just guaranteed a national title because we don't play in the SEC championship game. We still got to earn the national title, and then we have double rest, right? We have a bye week and an SEC championship bye week. So if rust is a problem, then we're really setting ourselves up to be rusty in that case. So I don't know. I used to think it was a great thing to have more time to prepare. That's what I thought. I don't know, like rust versus rest, I kind of get it. But as a player, if you're not on your shit as a player, just individually, if you eat too much at Thanksgiving, eat too much at Christmas, aren't doing whatever little things you can do around the house, little workouts when you go back home, yeah, you can get a lot more rusty. So I think the coaches like having control and they like knowing what the players are up to. So someone like Kirby, who's just a control freak, when all the players go home and they're doing all their own things, like it does probably give him anxiety. And not to mention, that is one way you can get in trouble is when you go home as a player. So we are all sales ahead for Georgia Tech, and we will see you then.
And you guys make sure that you are checking the podcast. The schedule is going to be a little bit different, being that it's Thanksgiving week. But make sure you tap in with us wherever you get your podcast, whether that is on Spotify or that is Apple Podcasts. Feel free to check out the YouTube page as well, where the video is posted. Dog Nation, it's always a blast. Keegan, appreciate you, man. As always, guys, you know what it is.
Off the leash.
Off the leash. It's the Sunday Scary Show. You don't want to miss it. Talking about sports, talking about ball, talking about the weekend. Well, how about them dogs? Pull out your brunch now, butter your biscuit. It's the Sunday Scary Show. You don't want to miss it.